Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Geisel. This podcast is dedicated to helping you create a life that sets your soul on fire. I believe that is truly possible for everybody, but you have to be willing to do a few things. You have to be willing to let go of your past conditioning. You have to be willing to break free from societal norms. And you have to be willing to get really curious about your life and how you can start to look at it differently. Each week, we will hear stories from people who have done exactly this. People who chose to disrupt the life path they were on, go against the grain, and share the lessons and perspective shifts they had to make along the way. Every episode is committed to not only inspiring you and connecting you with other amazing humans, but actually giving you the tools you need to use this information in your own life so that you continue to evolve and reconnect with your highest self. Are you ready? Let's have some fun. I want to thank you for joining us this week on another episode of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. And this week we are diving deep with Stesha Reukauf. She is a former engineer who left that career behind to start her own business and help empower women in their own health. We actually met this way because I was a client of hers when I was going through my own issues, which we dive into that story as well. Only after she transformed her relationship with her body, she found a higher calling and balance in her life. And we have a truly soul-led conversation in this episode with everything from self-love versus self-care to how discovering your own worthiness eliminates your fear and the powerful ways being present today impacts every aspect of our lives. We talk about vulnerability. We talk about ways we teach other people how to treat us. And in the very end, if you hang in for the post show, I actually talk about how emotion is held in our second chakra and how bringing emotions to the surface and wrestling through them actually helps us grow. So I am so excited for all of you to meet Stesha. So let's dive right in. All right, here we are, and I am so excited to be here with Stesha. She is, I'll tell you a little bit more about our relationship here in a minute, but I'm just really grateful to have you here today.
Hello. It's so good to see you. Yeah, I can't wait to see where this conversation goes because I think it's going to be really therapeutic for me too. You know, we're here and we never realize how we got here. And it's so therapeutic to realize, wow, yeah, all of that conspired to get me here and I wouldn't change it for the world. So excited.
Ooh, I cannot wait to dive into that. That's such like a good, that was like a trailer, like a really good movie trailer. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so in the very beginning of all the interviews, I like to just start with a few questions so the listeners can get to know you a little bit better without having to say like, hey, Stesha, who are you? Because that's like the worst question ever. So, so I'm going to start with an easy one. Where are you from and where do you currently live?
I am born and raised Montana, and we are from a little farm up in Joplin, Montana. So little small town farm girl. And I currently live with my husband on a cattle ranch in eastern Montana. So kind of back home, back to the roots.
Montana is it's so beautiful there. Not jealous of the fact that it's 33 there right now, but we drove through there and we haven't had a whole lot of time to stop and like really enjoy it, but we have every intention of doing that. Yeah, it's so funny seeing Stesha on her Instagram is like, you'll just all of a sudden see her with like pulling cows out of like mama cows. And you're like, what's happening over there? Like she is definitely, yeah, it's just, I feel like you just have like, it's all you, but there's so many sides to you that I love it. And I love seeing it.
What is this girl doing out there? Like, what? Yeah, that's where we live. It's just
so good.
So many parts.
So good. Okay. Where is your favorite place to travel?
You know, I'm not much of a traveler. I am definitely a homebody, but my favorite place ever is Sedona, Moab. We would go there a couple times as kids, and there's just something magical about that place. It's so gorgeous. It's like the best of all the worlds. You get so much variety and yeah, something just so magical about the nature of that place. And I told my husband, I'm like, you better believe it. Like we are getting a house down there or we're getting some kind of thing down there. Like I really do want to make it a consistent place to travel. It just fills me up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We have been to Sedona now 2 or 3 times. And every time we go, we are just more and more in love. I always talk to, I have a really great mentor that lives there. And I'm like, I say the same thing, like somewhere around here, we will have a place because it's magical. So it's so good. Okay. Well, then I know you're not much of a traveler, but I'm going to ask you this anyways. So where is some place that you've actually always wanted to go?
Like the Mediterranean, you see pictures of Greece and just like these beautiful waters and oh my God, the coastlines. Like, yeah, I want to go there and just eat and out in the sun and swim and just soak up the different culture. I don't know. And that's just seems so beautiful there.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Hold on. We're going to have to pause for a second. My dog is acting like a total psychopath right now. Here we go. Okay. So what's your favorite book?
My favorite one that I'm reading right now is called Own Yourself by Kelly Brogan.
Sounds good. It sounds like right up my alley.
Oh my gosh. She was the conventional psychologist, and she woke up to the ineffectiveness of, all these psychotropic drugs and how like they were actually making people more sick. And she's kind of that turncoat doctor into now more holistic psychologist. And now she's really focused on bringing people off medication in a really safe and holistic way. And she's never picked up a prescription pad ever again. And she's like my spiritual leader. Like she's got so much wisdom. I'm going to read the book again because there's so many parts I'm sure I missed. And just like with everything going on in the current world right now, a lot of people are waking up, to mommy medicine and daddy government, right? And like they don't want to be disempowered anymore, and they want their freedom back. And it's just like a perfect time to read that book. And I remember when I first went through my little rebellious phase with conventional medicine, coming off of birth control and kind of taking my power back. And at first I just wanted to, fight the system, and this is everything that's bad with it, and if I told enough people about the information, maybe they would see and come off of it, but that's never the case, right? Information does not influence anyone. So yeah, I've gone through that phase of rebellion before, and then coming back and like, okay, fighting the system does nothing. There's a quote by Bucky, what's his last name?
Ooh, I don't know.
Something Meister.
We'll just go with Bucky.
Yeah, Bucky. And he said, don't fight the system, create a new one to render the old one obsolete. Right. Mm. And so, and that's kind of what I do today. It's like, yeah, don't fight the system, create one where like women feel empowered and renders the current system obsolete. So I'm digging it.
Oh, I love that you said that, because it couldn't be more true. I mean, something I think I say to the women that I work with, I probably say it, I don't know, maybe multiple times a day, if not a few times a week, is like, you can't tell people what to do. You have to show them a different way. Like it just doesn't work. So, I love that you even brought that up. That's probably something I'm going to have to, and it speaks to both of our hearts, and we'll talk about your story here soon. But like me and my nursing background, same thing, like just like what is going on in our world? Like what is happening here? But yeah, we can't fight it. And it just like, it's here. And so we just have to create something different. So I love that. Okay. Last question. What was one of your favorite things to do as a kid?
Oh my gosh. I was just talking about this to someone. So I loved to pretend that I was a horse when I was little. And so I would like run around like the hills, the pastures, anything, pretending like I was a horse. And sometimes I still do that. Like when I'm just out in the middle of nowhere and I'm like listening to a good song on a podcast, I'm like, fuck yeah, this feels so free and I'm alive and I'm just running. And yeah, so I recognized that and was starting to incorporate it more into
I love that is the first time I've had that answer. So that's
Yeah.
really fun. No, I think that's actually so cool because horses kind of freak me out. And but not too long ago, I went to this horse sanctuary. It's a Mustang sanctuary, like an hour and a half from me. And my dog and I went and we met this horse. Her name was Maddie. And we ran up and down the fence line with her, like back and forth. And I was just like, I know the feeling that you're talking about because I was like, this is magical. Like, I'm not sure what it is about what's happening right now. Like, I probably look so funny, like running up and down the fence with this horse, but like, there's something about those animals. Like, I was instantly like, okay, I get it. I get why people are so attracted to horses because, yeah, there's something there.
like this deep compassion, yet like wild freedom, so much spirit. It's like, everything that we yearn for. And they just embody it.
Right? We should all just be horses. Like,
yes.
Think about that. Embody your inner horse. We're going to make that a new hashtag. Embody your inner horse. Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you for entertaining all of those questions. And you just never know what we're going to get. So I love it. I want to dive into your story, but first I want to let people know just kind of like how we even came into each other's lives. And I met Stesha, probably almost 3 years ago now, when I was in the middle of my own struggle with hormone issues and disordered eating. And I connected with her because I was looking for a mentor to help me with my nutrition business, but quickly realized that I needed you for so much more than that. Like, what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. And my health was like essentially in the shitter, to say the least. And I had the things. I had the perfect chiseled 6-pack body on the outside, but I was crumbling on the inside, like emotionally, mentally, physically. And Stesha was a huge part of me, like reclaiming my health and essentially my life. So after coming off birth control, I refused to put more synthetic hormones into my body. And with experimentation, time, and patience, I was really able to get like a healthy period back. When I say time, like 18 months. Mm-hmm. And I really just got like my life back. So I don't know if I ever truly thanked you for that, but thank you. So for that.
You're welcome.
But enough about me. I want the listeners to hear more about your story because like, if I'm not mistaken, you started out as an engineer and now you're helping women heal from the inside out, and like become mothers and just empower women in their health. So like, tell us more about that journey.
Yeah. Like, how does that come from? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I went to college and got 2 degrees in engineering, chemical engineering, bioengineering. And I wanted to stay in Montana. And sadly, really the only jobs in Montana is around oil field, oil refinery, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, man, okay, I can do this. Right. And 2 years in, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this for the rest of my life. It was a male dominated field. We're in cubicles. I'm designing heat exchangers and pumps every single day, day after day. And I'm like counting down the days to the weekend every single week and really just living for the paycheck, living for the weekend. And it wasn't until I've always been obsessed with health in the wrong ways. I've always tried to diet down and what's the new women's health magazine going to tell me to do? And, make sure I get on the elliptical for an hour a day. And that was my relationship with my body, nutrition, and exercise. But like something deep inside me was like, I love this stuff. Like, this is what I'm so passionate about. Kept trying to figure it out, maybe for the wrong reasons at the beginning, but it wasn't until I started CrossFit that finally I could show up to a place and be strong, feel confident, see progress, and not want to hate my body thin anymore. And that feeling for the first time in, 20 years of life, it's like, shit, I want to share this with the world. And so I got really obsessed with, becoming a CrossFit coach and looking into nutrition as performance now, right? I need to recover better. And still, I think for the wrong reasons. But it was getting better. It was a step in the right direction. And that's when people are like, well, what are you doing for nutrition? Well, I'm counting macros and I'm, using all this hashtag science to, fuel my body in recovery. And that's when I started coaching people at the gym for like $50 a month,
That's where I started too. So for anybody who's listening, who's starting a business, like, yeah, $50 a month.
Yeah. Yeah. So work 10 hours as an engineer, go work out for a couple hours, and then somehow coach people at, from the hours of 9 to 10 at night. And I did that for a long time and realized, shit, this is what I want to do. I love this. I get so much fulfillment out of it. And so then the idea started, okay, can I do this full time? Can I quit my job? And all of the imaginary thoughts in my head that were like, your dad's not going to approve. No one's going to approve. Like, you failed. You're not going to be successful. Like, being an engineer means you're successful. This is too risky. And so, God, I battled those thoughts for a year until I was finally ready to pull the trigger and just say, like, F you to the world, right? F you to those imaginary thoughts. And said, I'm doing it. And I went part-time first, and then I was a full-time coach shortly after that. But those years were brutal. They're just brutal. Like, if anyone has ever had experience working a full-time job, or maybe you're a full-time parent and you've got this side thing and you're so passionate, and it's like, oh, if I just had more time to work on this, I would be so much happier. Right? If I could just leave this other thing that's providing all the security and go full time on this passion, I'd be so fulfilled and happy. And so when you're living in that space, I mean, it's awful. It's brutal. But, finally I was able to pull the trigger, and I was actually really, really successful in terms of, finances and clients and social media and, all the outside external things. But here I was inside again, unfulfilled, unhappy, right? I got the dream business. So why was that? Well, I was running myself to the freaking ground, 6 phone calls a day, 20 plus email check-ins a day. I look back on my calendar. I look back on my Google Calendar in like year 2018. And I'm just like, the fuck was I thinking? So I just lived, breathed coaching. I got so much experience, so much, fulfillment, but I wore myself to the ground, completely burnt out, wanting to quit, and kind of at the end of the road again. And it wasn't until and this was just like doing general, macro coaching for women, who were experiencing adrenal fatigue and all the hormonal issues, and they were CrossFitting and kind of little replicas of me, right? The type A overachiever, got to do it all. I wonder why my body's breaking down. And so just coaching them.
Shocking.
They all wanted the secret of like, oh, how do I balance it all? Well, you can't. But yeah, just undoing a lot of mental, emotional hardships for these women. Just like you, Stacey, like you're searching for the secret to just make yourself feel worthy. That's all this is. No one goes out looking for that, but that's what the root of it is. And so, yeah, it's coaching these women with nutrition and, getting them on the right workout plan, but really behind the scenes, it's a lot of like, well, how are you fulfilled at work? What's your body image like? What are the kind of thoughts going through your head? And so that's where like the bulk of the coaching and the transformation came from, which was a hint of what I'm doing, a hint of where I am now. So I don't know if you want me to stop there. I feel like I've been talking for a year.
Well, let's touch on a couple things here because I think it's important too. It's funny when you talk about that because when I was doing nutrition and health coaching, it was similar. Like people would always say, like, I don't really feel like you're my nutrition coach. I feel like you're my life coach. And I think that it's important to realize that, and that was the part that I loved to help people with was like the life stuff and how do we feel about, how do we actually feel about the body that we're in? Like, why are we actually going after these goals? Like, what is it? But it took a lot of deep work for me to get there. And like you said, there's this whole essence of like this unworthiness for women. And, like even in your job from the transition from engineering and the do, we often, this happened to me too, is we transition into entrepreneurship because we want something different, right? We want the freedom, we want the lifestyle, but then we don't put the lifestyle first. So what we do is we just own our job now and we're still fighting for that same worthiness. So I guess my question is like, where was kind of the moment that you realized that like you were trying to prove yourself and like that was really like you were trying to, like I said, prove your worth. And how did you move through that?
So I'm going to be honest with you. It was about a couple weeks ago where I finally woke up to the fact that, yeah, I'm using my business to prove my worthiness. So, I mean, to the fact, like I really got to the root of it and was able to heal it. But the first time I realized that it was right before our wedding. It was right before our wedding and there was like so much family stuff going on and so many opportunities to hang out with friends. And I chose to be inside on the laptop, like glued to it, had to get to the emails, had to follow up. I couldn't even take a week off for my own wedding.
Oh, so it's funny because I think I was actually working with you at this point. And, but I want people to hear this because this is what we do. These are the types of things that we use to cover up our feelings of unworthiness. And I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because, there was a time when I went from when I was working my nursing job and then I started training in CrossFit and then powerlifting. And there was a time that I chose to leave my nephew's birthday party because I had to work out. And when I started my business, it was the same thing. I chose like to not spend time with family, to go to bed super early, to not stay up late that night, and not in a way of like, so there's ways of doing that where it's in your highest good. And then there's ways because you're terrified of missing a workout the next day, or you're going to not be able to, or like you're constantly on your phone checking to see if everybody's okay. And from my experience, I would love to hear this from you, is like, it's a boundaries thing, right? Like again, because we're trying to prove, so we have no boundaries because we're afraid that if we set a boundary that people are no longer going to like us or they won't love us because we're doing what's best for us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this scarcity mindset. And that's really what fear is. A lot of these limiting beliefs are stemming from usually a couple roots. And what I mean by roots, it's like there's one root and it might look like many branches, right? So the unworthiness root is going to look like, oh, I need to exercise more. Oh, I need to work overtime at my job. Oh, I need to lose a couple more pounds, whatever. Like those are kind of the symptoms of it. And so, yeah, the boundaries thing is just a symptom of that. Like not fully believing that you are worthy or deserving to put yourself first. And therefore it's always questioning, well, I got to make sure, Stacy doesn't think I'm a bad coach. So I got to make sure I check up on her. And so it's those kind of thoughts that infiltrate our head and convince us that, yeah, we've got to do this in order to keep our ego patched up and keep this facade of like what we look like on the outside. We've got to keep it all together. I mean, anyone can see right through it, right? But we think we're doing such a good job.
It's really true. And so like often when I work with people too, it's this like you're searching for something. And I see so many women, especially, they end up martyrs in their life, right? They think they're patting themselves on the back for putting everyone else first because that's what we're supposed to do. But you're searching for, again, it comes back to worthiness, but a lot of times you're searching for love. You want to be loved, and you think that if you put everybody else first, then they're going to love you. But the reality is, like, the only person's love that like you really need is yours. And the only way you're going to get that is by putting yourself first. And that's why I think self-care, like I was actually thinking about this morning. I don't really love that word because it's like, it's one, maybe it's just been overused. And two, I don't think that it gets to the root, because I think that self-love is what we actually need. And yes, we can do that through self-care, but like we have to know what it actually is that we're looking for. And yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The self-care, it's like treating the symptom, and the self-love is actually healing the root cause. And, self-care might look like, taking time to go to that yoga class. Well, if you don't truly believe that you deserve that yoga class, it's just another thing on the to-do list that you've got to cram in that, oh, I checked it off the box. I'm a good girl now. And self-love to me is turning and looking to those shadow parts of yourself and being like, I fucking love you. And yes, you can stay here. And yes, you can reside here. And yes, I accept you. And guess what? I'm actually going to show you off to the whole entire world. That's self-love. And when you do that to all parts of yourself, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the victim part of you, there's nothing to run from anymore. There's nothing to hide from. There's nothing to fear. You can literally enjoy the present moment, have healthy desires for things, but you don't feel so attached and desperate for the outcome, desperate to get that thing in order to feel worthy. So
I love how you stated that, like, self-care is treating the symptom and self-love is like treating the root, because you couldn't be more spot on with that. Like, and so many times we're searching for that self-love, but then we just add things to our plate. And we make so many things like, okay, well, now I have to do this because this is what I'm told that self-care is. And now I'm being like, there's so many expectations that come from being, just being a woman, and especially being a woman in business. Like there's a lot there that we have to be willing to strip away. And I always say, like, transformation, like what I help women with, it is not about we're not adding anything. It's actually more of a process of removing all the things that are not actually you and all the masks that you have put on over the years to put out this persona that you have it all together, that you don't need any help, that you don't need any of that. And it's like, man, it's amazing when you get to this point. And this is something I want you to, like, for the listeners to hear, is that one, all of this takes time. Like, you can't, as humans, we come to earth as souls, we come to earth as humans to learn lessons, to go through things. And it's a process of getting there, and you don't get to skip steps. So like sometimes you're in the middle of it and you don't understand why, but if you're always trying to get to the end of it, then you're going to miss out on the beauty of all of that. And it's so freeing when you can sit there and say, you know what, like, I don't exactly know why I'm here, but I'm going to make the most out of the ebb and flow that I'm in right now. Like, that's a very fun place to be able to come from.
Yeah. This term, I heard spiritual bypassing, where it's like, no one wants to go through the dark night of the soul. Everyone wants to suppress it, numb it, pass it, and just get to the end. And what ends up happening is, like, we don't get this experience of shedding the layers that you were talking about, shedding those conditioned beliefs that we, learn from our parents. And when we just get into we get to be adults and we're still little kids inside, triggered and reactive. And we never went through that process of really like, who are we? What do we stand for? What are our values? Like, what's a hell yes? What's a hell no? And, who am I? What's my purpose? And so we just get into be these little, I don't know, just follow whatever someone tells me to do, just rule followers. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but I see a lot of it. And I see a lot of like the victim mentality. Like there's nothing wrong with feeling that, but to embody it and to outsource your power on a lot of things in your life. Like, yeah, that's disempowerment. That's not freedom. And it's not happiness. It's not fulfillment. And so, yeah, it's the stripping of the conditioned beliefs, I think, and going through that initiation.
Like a lot of times this process from the outside in looks messy. Like I've had so many people like tell me that like I, there's before I was very purposeful in what I did. Well, what I was obsessed and a control freak. And all of that also stems from fear. And the big thing is I wasn't happy. So now sometimes when you start to go against the grain, when you start to do things your way, instead of blindly following what society has taught us to believe or think or do, people look at that and they're going to be a little bit nervous. And then they're like, what happened to you? Like, you're like things look chaotic and it's just like, oh my gosh, but I am so happy. Like I am so happy in this moment. And I think that again, it does come with this. I love that you said spiritual bypassing because everybody is trying to get to the end. And like everybody listening, like you don't want to get to the end. Like there's only one place we end up, right? This whole journey is about growing. But I see this all the time. And especially in, there's all of these new things out, which are, embody your inner goddess and like all of these things. And I'm like, oh Lord, like maybe you're just not there yet. Like you're not broken if you don't feel like a fucking goddess. You just haven't done enough work to get there. And it's like, the thing that people don't take into account is how long it took for that person to feel that way. And you can get a mentor and a coach and somebody who's going to help you maybe speed up the process, but you still have to go through every single part of that process. You don't get to skip it.
No. No. Become your inner goddess. Yep, that's exactly right. Like, let's just skip and start, with the affirmations, but we're not actually, going to yank that weed out first. So again, surface level. And yeah, I did that for so long. I mean, you look behind me and there's a bookcase of personal development. God bless. But before it's like just reading it and it feels good and it sounds good. I wake up, nothing's changed. And that's frustrating. And it's because it's like, yeah, where it makes sense logically. I read it. Yeah, I love it, but I haven't changed. I can change my thoughts for a second, but if that root is still there, just spewing out the same, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. You don't deserve this. Everyone gets it. You don't, everyone deserves it. You don't, then nothing's going to change. I haven't changed my resonance, my vibration. I'm still that person stuck in the scarcity mindset. So yeah,
I love that you brought that up about affirmations. I'm not a huge fan because here's the thing, like you can tell yourself something all day long. And if you don't believe it, it's not going to do shit. And so that's why it's like, I am telling you, manifestation is going to become a billion-dollar industry because people think they can just think things and they happen. And like that, and I'm not saying that everybody teaches this, but it is very much like all you have to do is think about stuff. And then like it comes into your life. Like actually that can happen, but only if you have done the work, if you have gone through the process, if you have, like Stesha saying, you have to be willing to dig in and figure out the root, because, or else you're just going to feel like you're stuck in this perpetual cycle, and you're going to feel, and I feel like the world that we're in, this is what's so unfortunate, is leaving women feeling even more broken. Well, how come I can't manifest? How come I don't feel like a goddess? How come like affirmations don't work for me? It's like, because again, you're not there yet. There's root stuff that we still have to drudge up. So where did that start to like, we could go off on a rampage on this, but where did this start to like shift for you, like along your journey? Because
the first time that I really faced the inner stuff was after I miscarried the first time. And I had zero tools, zero skills to really effectively process the emotion of grief. No one's ever died in my life. Like, this was literally the biggest, first biggest loss. And it was a 4 to 5 month depression, resentment, judgment, shame, just the darkest night ever. And when I started to kind of, time went on and okay, the wound is getting a little less relevant. Hadn't really healed anything, right? But time was healing. And I opened up this book. I think it was called Will I Ever Be Enough? Oh boy. Opened it up, started reading, and realized, wow, I have so many mommy issues. So I've gone through my whole entire adult life justifying, like, yeah, my mom's an alcoholic. Yeah, she's a kind of a narcissist. Yeah. She did the best she could. I turned out fine. We're good. It wasn't until I read that book and I went through the 5 stages of grief, the anger of her, like, how could she do this to me? She ruined me, then the sadness of all that I missed out on in childhood and on life, and all the suffering that I had to go through because of these beliefs that I had from her. And then there was the forgiveness, like, okay, I understand, like, she was raised this way. I can show compassion for that. And then finally acceptance. And so that was really the first time I actually had an inner child healing experience. And I did all of this on my own. And it was long and drawn out, but it happened. And I experienced such lightness after that. I had so much more to go, but that was the first time. So that was like 2019, the beginning of 2019. And it was so painful. I'm like, I don't ever want to go there again, right? I'm healed. I'm fine. But that was the first step. It's obviously continued deeper, especially these last 3 months. But I don't know if you want to talk about any of that.
Yeah, I think it's powerful that, again, we have to go through the human experience of having the emotions and have, like, that's part of the beauty of being human, is that we get to go through all of those things. And even though they feel like really cruddy in the moment, it's just, but the power that you get back in yourself is like, I feel like for women, and maybe you can touch on this, and maybe even in your own story, is that, we're always talking about how our power is taken from us. I think we give it away. We give it away, right? And like, we give it away by not working through the stuff, because whether you realized it or not, like that feeling that you had towards, like, your mom had so much power over you. Like, you had given away a lot of your power to her because you didn't want to bring it to the surface and you didn't want to work through it. So I just think that's a beautiful thing to kind of point out there.
Yeah. And I see this a lot in relationships. A lot of my friends are like still dating, and just so much power is given away in the relationship. And it doesn't matter how many times I stand up and say, like, you're successful and you're smart and you're beautiful and you're intelligent and all those things that I genuinely think are true. They do not see it. Why? Because they too have these limiting beliefs that they have not addressed and that they have not really because until they accept themselves and that they see themselves that way, no man out there is going to fulfill that. They think that's what's going to fulfill it, but it's not. It's just this perpetual cycle of like, oh, here's the same emotionally unavailable man that you have attracted.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And I think that like we've all been there where because we are taught that everything that's going to bring us happiness and fulfillment and joy is found outside of us. Mm-hmm. That is the way that our culture tells us. But actually, everything is within us. And actually, I just posted this yesterday, but I think it's a quote that's worth hearing, is that the day you approve of yourself and fully accept yourself, on that day, the world will finally accept you.
Yeah, I saw that.
We cannot, you will never get the approval that you're looking for until you learn to approve of yourself. So you went through a miscarriage, which I'm sure was just not an easy thing. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you started to heal through some of this stuff, but then like getting pregnant again wasn't easy for you.
Yeah. So that was the moment like, okay, I'm perfect on my nutrition. I've cut back on workouts. I'm doing the whole acupuncture thing, right? Checking off all the boxes. I'm like, yeah, it was the best I've ever felt. Probably the best my body ever looked. I felt like I had way better work-life balance than before, right? I was just like riding the high. I'm like, yeah, I've got this. And then we miscarried again. And everything came back up like a fresh new wound. And I'm like, really? And it was still because I was so attached to the outcome. I was still expecting that getting pregnant was going to finally prove to me, to the world, that I was worthy. It might sound crazy, but like if there's anyone out there who has experienced this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this can even be like in your business too, right? Oh, I didn't hit my revenue goal. It means that I'm unworthy. It means I'm not good enough. No one wants what I have, and I should find a different strategy. It's that same thought process. You make it mean something about you instead of, oh yeah, this is just what happens sometimes. And let me grieve and process, and then, tweak some things if I need to, but keep the faith and keep going. So that's where I learned all of that from. The little spiel there is from that second miscarriage, because now I had the tools to process it and go through it again. And from that experience, I finally felt genuine trust in my body, in the universe. I finally felt what it feels like to let go and just be in the present moment and enjoy life now. Doesn't matter if I'm going to get pregnant tomorrow or 10 years from now. Like, that was the conclusion I came from. Like, I love myself so much. Doesn't matter what the pregnancy status is. Doesn't matter what any kind of status is on the outside. And that kind of, when you're vibrating in that resonance, like, I'm pretty deep in like quantum medicine and quantum physics, but like when you align your true vibration with the field of abundance and gratitude and appreciation, that's where abundance lives. That's where the manifestation happens right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it comes from that deep healing and acceptance and so much appreciation for just you and your creativity.
And it's really powerful. And I think that it's important I want to highlight something that you said, which was like, you went through it again, and again, when you're going through this personal growth, and just know this for pretty much the rest of your life, like if something keeps happening, it's because you haven't learned the lesson yet. Mm-hmm. And we're always like, okay, I'm ready to be done with this. Like sometimes women get into like my program and they're like, okay, I want to do this because I just want to be done. And I was like, well, that's the wrong attitude to come in with, because like it's never going to be done. But it doesn't mean that you won't go through these things again and again, but you just are better equipped to handle them every single time, and you don't have to sit in it as long. So you're not broken because like, okay, we're back in that same place in my business. I'm back in that same place as a mom. I'm back in that same place financially. Like you said, you have to grieve and then be willing to tweak it and be able to move forward. So after that happened then, and after you kind of realized that everything that you needed was within you, right? And that you were going to love yourself no matter whether you were pregnant, not pregnant, no matter how many times things didn't go your way. How did things start to shift for you?
Well, if anyone knows what it feels like to just have such a controlling death grip on your routine and your nutrition and your supplements and your workout routine. And just like you were saying at the beginning, like I have to be in bed at 9 p.m. so I can get up and do my workout. And it's just this yucky, like, yeah, you're constricting life. You're restricting life, constricting life. So you go from that to waking up and sipping your cup of coffee and just sitting there and taking in nature outside and hearing the birds. And just like every little moment is so rich and precious. So you shift from just needing to get done and get there and get the thing to, fuck, this is it. Like I'm soaking it up. And your body just feels like it's vibrating all the time, because you just feel so amazing. So needless to say, yeah, getting pregnant was very easy after that. Conceived with Atlee, who's now 1 year old today. Was it August 2019? So yeah. And because I did that work, I wasn't anxious through my pregnancy. I wasn't waiting to miscarry again. I wasn't worried about what was going to happen. So I see, a lot of women who don't process the feelings and even like release the guilt and the shame of a miscarriage, and they move right into the next pregnancy. All those same feelings are there. They're just showing up as a different symptom. Now I'm worried about the pregnancy. Now I'm worried about the birth. Now I'm worried as a new mom. It doesn't stop. It just keeps snowballing.
Yeah. And it's so like life is actually pretty simple. Like, I mean, there's hard moments, but it's so funny because we make life so much harder than it actually has to be. Like, and I think when you realize that you can just be in that moment, and that is what life is all about. Like when you're always trying to get to the next thing, like you're literally missing the point of why we're here and the beauty of this experience that we get to be in. And I always joke that people are so concerned about getting to heaven. And I'm like, how do you even know what that's like? Like, why would you not just be making every, be a good person, but like, what if this is our heaven? Like, what if we treated life like that a little bit? It would be a very different experience for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Different experience for the world too. Like no one would be trashing it. No one would be, just trying to make more money and get. It would look very different on this planet right now.
It would. It would. We're going to change the world. We're getting there.
Yeah.
But again, like Stesha said, we have to create an environment. We have to show people that there's another way. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you're choosing to live your life different and people don't necessarily understand it, and they don't it's okay that they don't understand it. But amazing things happen when you choose to be in that super high vibration. And that doesn't mean toxic positivity. That doesn't it means enjoying the ebb and flow of life. And even when not great things happen, you get to grieve through those and all of that. But we have to be willing to show up, because we are then giving other people, you're giving other people permission to do the same. People need permission to be able to live their life in that way and at that vibration. And I think it's just an important thing for people to experience.
And I think the best way to show people is through vulnerability. I think just saying exactly how you feel and why you feel it, you connect with so many people on that same level. And I always thought like I was being vulnerable, like on social media and stuff. And then when I really took a hard look, and I'm like, yeah, you talk about what you've been through, but you're not showing up authentically, vulnerably, but through what's going on right now in your life. That's powerful. Showing up and saying, yeah, I'm feeling freaking defeated right now, did all this and got this outcome, and just want to speak to anyone out there who's feeling that way, because look, it's tough now, but like, we're going to get through this. And this is what life's all about. It's like, man, someone reads that and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going through that too. Now I know that I'm not alone. And wow, now I just got something extremely positive. I can start, spiraling up instead of continuing to spiral down. So I think that's the best way to practice what you preach. Show people that it's okay to feel the spectrum of emotion, because until I truly felt, not just say I felt, truly felt the shame and fear, I'm not going to be able to feel the love and gratitude, right? The pendulum goes both ways. If you want to stay right in the middle, it's going to be a life of numbness. See a lot of people in that numbness.
And I love that you're talking about that, because we do, people do, they want to block out the bad, but when you block out the bad, you also, and like, I don't even like to label it, but you're going to block out the good too. And it's just a matter of like, it just is, right? And I always say that, like, can we just take the label off of it? Take the negative and positive away, the good and bad away. Like how you are feeling right now, it just is. And there are other people who are feeling that exact same way, that just need to know that. That's why I love working with groups, and because I'm like, women especially need to know they're not alone. And whether like things that relate to somebody in one way relate to somebody else in a totally different way, but they would never see it if they weren't in this group of women that are like supporting them. So I think that's powerful for women to, like, when you get together, like, this is why I struggle with surface level conversation, because I'm like, let's not talk about other people. Let's not gossip. Let's just talk about who we are and how we're feeling, because you have no idea what you being willing to show up and say, I'm struggling, will do for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that me too. Oh my gosh. What did you learn from it? How are you working through it? How can I support you? And then you just have this deep bond with that person now. And I used to be the girl that was actually hated being a girl. I had all guy friends. I was a daddy's girl. I was an engineer, for God's sake. Like I prided myself on, not being like other girls, right? Not having feelings, not needing girlfriends and shopping dates and all these things. And what I was really doing was, shutting off who I was, completely disconnecting from my own body and just like living from the neck up. And do you think I had deep connections? Do you think I was like really vulnerable? Do you think like I was able to love and express who I really was? No. And what kind of life is that when you're not able to just be who you are? So I get that. Yeah. And a lot of like type A, high achiever women who love CrossFit and have these really successful careers, they're in the same way. They want to disassociate with that weak, vulnerable part of themselves. That's where all their power's at.
Oh, and you couldn't be more spot on. Like, we use that as a defense mechanism. And I always say, like, you have to look at the aspects of yourself that people wouldn't necessarily look at and be like, that's a negative thing, right? Like, and independence is one of those things, like, for me, but like independence for me it can be good, but it can also it can be something that's holding me back. And the second it started to hold me back was when I realized that my independence left me with trying to do everything by myself and unable to ask for help. Right. Like it was just so like when you look at that, because I used to be the same way with women, like, and now I wouldn't give up my relationships with the women in my life for anything because like they're so powerful. And I know that this shift is starting to happen, but like I was protecting myself from something, of probably looking weak. Like the last thing anybody ever wanted was to look like they weren't okay. Mm-hmm. And that's part of this beautiful experience is not being okay sometimes and letting other people help us through that. Like it's crazy because I always think about how good does it feel when somebody comes to you and they're like, I'm struggling. Can you help me? And you're like, oh my gosh, yes, let me help you. But then we don't give that opportunity back because we're so afraid we're going to burden somebody. And it's like, no, like think about how you feel when someone asks you for help. Like other people want to be that for you, but you have to let them in.
Yep. Yeah. There was a turning point for me when I finally was okay asking for help. I was like in this program, we're actually healing like our emotional trauma and inner child. And the second babysitter bailed on me. Mother-in-law couldn't come over. Husband was busy. So I had this baby and like, you're supposed to be at full attention, on this call. And I just like showed up to the call just crying. And they're like, what's up? I'm like, I just feel like no one cares about me. Like, because I was unwilling to ask for help and I was looking for no one caring about me and no one being there for me. And I look back, it's like, yeah, I set myself up for like these last minute babysitters canceling and not letting anyone know. And so it's kind of funny to look back and see, wow, my limiting belief has actually cut me off from people helping me, people connecting with me, people being vulnerable with me. So yeah, like for anyone's listening, it's like, yeah, I really do crave that deeper connection. And I do want to be more vulnerable. I just don't know how. It's scary. And the first thing you can start doing is just voicing that. Just voice that. To your best friend, like, I really want to be more vulnerable, but I'm so scared. Wow. Like, what's that going to open up?
Right. It's great advice because sometimes you just have to open up the space to do so. And if you don't have a space to go to, create one, because there's more than just you that is craving that connection to just be able to be seen and to be heard. And there's one thing I've learned in life. It's that everybody just wants to be seen, heard, loved, and understood. And but if we don't give that to ourselves first, then no one else is going to give that to us. And when you put yourself last, everyone else will too. Like it's pretty simple. Like I know that that's like a hard thing to hear, but we teach people how to treat us. And so this is like so much you have said, I know is going to resonate with so many women because they've just been through, even if they haven't been through the exact experience, like all the feelings are there. And the biggest thing I can say is you have to be willing to go through them. The only way to the other side of anything is through. And the more you can't push it down. And this is actually what I'll do the post show on. So I'll keep this for the end, but I will talk about, the fact that we can't just keep pushing things down because they're always going to come to the surface. So one last question for you, Stesha, because I want to honor your time of being here is, what is one lesson you feel like you're still in the middle of learning?
One thing that I know that it will come up in due time is really, truly, genuinely feeling like I deserve it. It being, I don't know, but I feel like that's the big last root that I need to work through, that I get to work through. And the other is just loving so much, like every part of me, even the judgy, critical, victim part of me, because she just wants a say too, right? And the more I, like you said, suppress her, the louder she gets and the more power she has. And so I just picture her like this little girl that just really feels victimized and just needs to be heard and held and loved and nurtured. And that's been my experience, like doing that to the parts of myself. Immediate relief and healing. So I know that next big one is going to be, it's going to be a tearjerker. And usually, like, the way that I process emotion is going out for a walk in the middle of nowhere, pretty easy to do out here. And like literally just talking to that part of me, talking to the inner child who didn't feel like she deserved it. Like, where did that belief come from? And just be able to feel all those emotions that I didn't feel when I was little and instead protected myself from. That.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. And it's, I love that. Like, so if anybody is in Montana and you see, happen to see Stesha walking around talking to herself, like, this is just how she processes. And I love the fact that you're willing. Yeah. Pretending like she's a horse. You'll know exactly who she is. But thank you for sharing that. And truly, I want to honor you for showing up and really for something that you struggle with. You were vulnerable on this podcast and showing that you're still going through it. And we all are. Like, we see the highlight reel, we see the different things, but like, there is always moments that are going to be hard and difficult, and we're always processing through something. And for you to like let us in on that at such a deep level, I just appreciate you for that. For a lot of things, but that specifically right this second.
Awesome. Progress. Affirmations, confirmation. Doing the work.
Oh, I love it. Well, Stesha, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I just know people are going to pull so much from this. So if women want to connect with you more, how can they do that? Because I know they're going to want to.
Instagram. I respond to every DM, every comment. So if you want to say, hey, me too, I resonated, I'd love to hear your story. So
perfect. And we'll make sure.
Yeah, that's Stesha.Reukauf. So many vowels. You're going to want to put that in the show notes.
I will put that in the show notes for sure. Yeah, so I'll put that in the show notes. So do connect with her. I know that I say this quite a bit on the podcast, but it's like when we say we love to connect with people, we aren't kidding. And we want, and I know Stesha's heart and like where she does business from and where she just leads her life from. And it's a very heart-centered place. And she wouldn't be putting herself out there. And we are able to hold space for people and allow you to come through and be heard and feel understood and feel the love. And so, yeah, please connect if you felt any pull towards Stesha, reach out, because I know that she'll hold that space for you. So, Stesha, thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome.
Here we are hopping into the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast post show. So that was a very, very powerful interview with Stesha. And I am so glad that she was willing to come on and just be so raw in the fact that we're always processing through things. And something I want to bring up is the fact that, again, the only way to the other side of anything is through. And something that we're really not taught is how to handle and move through emotion. We are taught to push it down. And here's the thing, all of our emotion is held in our second energy center. It's held in our second chakra, and it is messy. It is the messiest of the energy center. And it's the one that I see very blocked in our culture, our society, and with the women and men that I work with. I know I talked about this briefly on a previous podcast, but with so many men and women, we aren't taught how to express emotion, how to feel it, how to move through it. We're just taught push it down, push it down, push it down. And what's interesting is that the animal that's associated with the second chakra is the crocodile. And the crocodile, because when you think about a crocodile, what it does is it's kind of beneath the surface, and then it sees its prey, and then it comes to the surface, it grabs it, and then it wrestles around with it a lot, and then it doesn't even eat the whole thing. It just like lets it, like at some point, it just lets it go. And that's literally what we have to do with our emotions. We have to bring them to the surface is the step one. And then we have to allow ourselves to wrestle through them. We have to allow ourselves to wrestle through them. We don't get to say how long that is. And what I see for a lot of men and women, what they do is they might feel something and then they give themselves a time limit. Okay, I've been sad for 5 minutes. Now I need to move on. Like, you have to work all the way through it. So you may need tools to do that. You may need a friend to reach out to. You might want a therapist. You may want to be in a group that is going to support you and help you move through it, maybe give you different perspectives, but nobody gets to say how long you get to feel something. Because it might take longer than you want it to. It might take longer than you think. But if you don't work your way all the way through it, then it's going to manifest in your life in two ways. And I see this for so many men and women, is when our second chakra is blocked or imbalanced, it is the element that's associated with it is water. Okay. And so we're either ice, which is numb. When we have turned ice cold, we become numb to life. Just like Stesha said, we become numb to how beautiful life is, to the playfulness, to the creativity, to the sweetness that life actually brings. But the other way it can go is steam. And steam is when we feel so much anger and so much resentment towards the people in our life, towards the things in our life. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's simply because you have an imbalanced second energy center. It might be blocked, and it's because we're not allowing the emotions that we're supposed to feel as human beings come to the surface, and we're not working through them. So, what are you pushing down? That is my question for you today and for this week, is to think about, like, what is it that you're pushing down, that you're not letting come to the surface, that you're refusing to work through? Because you will never be able to move through it if we don't bring it to the surface. Right? And are you willing to reach out and ask for help? Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. It is a sign of being willing to say, I want to live my best life and I need help seeing my blind spots, seeing what maybe I'm missing, to give me a different perspective, to help me move through this because I've pushed it down for so long. There's no shame in that. It should be welcomed, and it is truly seen as a sign of strength. So that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in for another week of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. When you get a moment, please take your time to take 5 minutes. It wouldn't even take 5 minutes to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It means the world. We're giving donations to great causes for every single review that is written. So please share your thoughts because we want to hear them. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any journal prompts or you don't miss anything in the Evolve Beyond Limits world, shoot me a text of journal 2021 to 248-206-3431 so that I can follow along on your journey of growth and evolution, because I want to be there. And then take a second to just tag Stesha and I in the episode, and like, what was your biggest takeaway? What was something that you just really felt, and how might you use that to kind of move forward? So until next time, keep evolving.